what separates people that enjoy entrepreneurship. I've been fortunate to have some wins. I've had some epic fails, and I'm going to have both, over the next 20, 30, 50 years that I'm doing this. So, I think you have to enjoy the process. If you like the process and you can be proud of the values you have and how you approach the work, whether you win or lose at the end, you still had a good time.
Mr. Fowler, we appreciate you coming on our show, man. You're in Canada right now, is that correct?
Absolutely. I'm here in Toronto, and I think you guys are in Austin, one of my favorite cities in the US.
Well, hey, anytime you come down, we'd love to get you some barbecue or some tacos and meet you. But
both, man.
We'll get both.
Man, barbecue tacos. I make, I'll tell you a quick story before I jump in.
Yeah.
So I've only been to Austin once, and I came basically during Hurricane Katrina. So we were flying down. I was still pretty young then. We were flying down to go to South by Southeast, go to the South by Southwest, go to the music conference. And Katrina happened, so we couldn't fly in direct. We had to fly into San Antonio. And we're sitting in the Toronto airport, and the lady at the counter is helping us get our tickets sorted. And when my dad said he was taking the family into a hurricane to see a musical act, I thought this lady was going to call the Children's Aid on us and get us taken away. But we went. It ended up being the coolest trip because we took basically a 15-hour road trip through back roads and old towns because the interstate was all clogged up to get from San Antonio to Austin. Had a beautiful time there, ate just some amazing food and enjoyed the city. And I haven't had a chance to be back, but hopefully I'll be down there soon when all this Corona stuff clears up.
There we go. Yeah, we would welcome you, and hopefully we can catch up on some of the cannabis laws here in Texas and Austin specifically. But appreciate your time, man. We love cannabis. We love following the space, and you're doing a lot of cool things. We primarily have entrepreneurs, business people, and just try to add value any way we can to our listeners and also to you. If you're cool with it, we'd love to hear about a little bit about your background and how you got to the position that you're in today, what you have going on, and we'll just jump in and ask questions.
Absolutely. So, I'm born and bred here in Toronto, Canadian, and I've been involved in cannabis, broadly speaking, since I was a teenager. So I'm over 15 years, getting close to 20 years in the space now. It started, let's be frank, I had an interest in smoking the stuff. I always liked it, the drinking, and I always got to say my parents were supportive. They always said the worst thing about pot is that you could get caught, it could ruin your life. But from a health perspective, they preferred that, smoking a little pot was better than, drinking a few more beers than I should.
I'm glad you answered that already, because everyone always gets mad if I don't ask, do you partake? So.
Oh, every day. Every day. I look at it. Look, you don't have to consume cannabis to work in the space. I think you do have to love the stuff and love the people that use it. But I think it's a lost opportunity. If you don't like the consuming part of cannabis and the smells and the flavors, you should not waste your time in the space. Go make money somewhere else that you love. I think it's the same thing whether you're building homes or working in finance. You should love what you do. But that's why I got into it. And then where things really changed is when I was a teenager, I was hanging out with a friend of mine. Her mom came home. She's a nurse, sat down on the couch and lit a joint. My mind exploded. I had never seen an adult smoke pot other than Snoop Dogg and Willie Nelson. I was like, oh, I didn't know adults did that, right? And she's a medical cannabis patient. And that was really where I realized this is not just something that, you do in college or whatever. It's something that can be a part of your life and a positive part of your life. She told me the story of how cannabis helped her. And then for about 7 or 8 years, my peer group was medical cannabis patients, generally in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it was amazing. I learned how to grow. I learned how to make products. I learned the hardship of the laws. I learned the problems all around the world. And that eventually led me to become an attorney. Originally, I wanted to be a cannabis rights attorney. It turns out that's not really a full-time job. So I ended up being a corporate suit on Bay Street. So that's Canada's equivalent of Wall Street. And basically, by the time my first 90 days of work was done, the cannabis company that I had started when I was a student we sold it to a public company, and I got a knock on my door to run that public company. So in November of 2014, I quit law to sell drugs, as I like to tell my mom, because I can see her blood pressure go up when I say it. But no, I quit to run Supreme Cannabis Company. We built the brand 7 Acres in Canada to be one of the top brands, really flower focused, really consumer focused. And, I had a great 5-year run there. We built the company up to almost 1,000 employees globally. We were at an $80 million a year revenue run rate, getting close to 100 mil. And, we raised over 300 million bucks to build that business. So it really was a fantastic experience. Really honed my business view of cannabis. I got into cannabis as an advocate and as a consumer, and being a cannabis entrepreneur. And then over the last year, since I've been out at Supreme, focused on building up Blaise Ventures. So that's a consulting and investment firm that I started with a partner. And what we focus on is finding good opportunities in the Canadian space where we think that the commercial opportunity is undervalued. So we're not trying to build public companies or create capital gains. We're trying to work hard and build net income and make real operating profits. So we're involved in a sales and marketing company that we started, where we started Big Concentrate. So that's we launched in December as one of the biggest concentrate brands in Canada, one of the must-have products in our biggest market here in Canada. It's dabs, like rosin and stuff like that. And then most of my time I spent working at a company called Muskoka Grown, and that's an asset that was in some financial difficulty in 2020. We're doing a court-led restructuring of that company, and myself and my team are leading the operations there. It's just about 2 hours outside of Toronto, and our goal is to build that over 2021 into one of the top sort of everyday smoker brands, right? Like good indicas, good flavor, fair prices. We're not trying to do the Dom Perignon thing or Jay-Z's $50 joints. We're trying to just, good weed for people that want to get high every day and don't want to have to mortgage their home or give up their firstborn. They just want to, pay a fair price for good bud.
Nice, man. So big focus is building out the existing, businesses that you have. Are you bringing on investors and looking at new opportunities all the time as well?
So primarily I'm self-financing the businesses that I'm working on. So I do have a partner in Muskoka Grown who is one of the creditors from the prior business. But for the most part, again, that's why we're focused on operating cash flow. That gives us the ability to reinvest in ourselves and build the team. And for us, it's really about making sure that we can control the vision and the direction of the companies. We don't always see eye to eye with the rest of the space, but at least 5 years in Canada has proven that for the most part, our thesis are correct. And for the most part, when we bet on ourselves is when we do the best. So we're okay growing a little slower and bootstrapping ourselves up rather than taking the money that's maybe available to us. But I think the end result is a stronger company and certainly a lot more fun when I come to work every day.
Yeah, for sure. And we're so far removed, me being a big fan of cannabis and everything that it can provide. Being in Texas is unfortunate in some ways, like knowing what's going on. I mean, it seems like it would be so exciting to be in the mix in Canada and be around it. And I've got a couple questions. I'm so intrigued by the beverages, and also I feel as if, sorry if you take this wrong, but I feel like Canada messed up in the way they've done this in some ways. Like they were the leader and they did it first. And I kind of want them to continue to be that way. But it seems from the outside that they've made it like very restrictive, which has allowed, some of these US companies to like get some advantages here. And it's just interesting. Like I feel like Canada could have done a little bit better job of leading this whole industry, leading the world. And I don't know if that's true or not, but would love to hear your perspective on the beverages and Canada, as far as trying to be a market leader as a place.
Yes. So I think starting with the beverages, that's a really exciting category for me. It's not something I deal with much directly. I'm not a big edibles fan. For me, you want to sit down and smoke joint after joint after joint on a Friday, I'm game. You give me 5 edibles and I'm asleep, 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, and I'm asleep. That said, I think that it's a really interesting format to build social consumption, right? So one reason that as an entrepreneur, I like dried flower, there's a ritual around consuming, right? I used to work in beverage alcohol, I used to work in bars. There's a ritual around how we drink, right? We don't take alcohol pills or alcohol patches. it's as much about how we consume and who we consume with than actually the end result of being intoxicated, right? So for me, I love the ritual around smoking cannabis. I'm curious to see how that ritual may or may not be different post-COVID. You know, are we going to pass joints around again? Who knows? But I think with drinks, what's cool is there's at least a vision you can have in your head of like a cannabis bar, right? Going in, getting a pint of a cannabis lager or having a shot of something, and it's social. Whereas with edibles, when you're just eating something, the ritual of consumption isn't there. So the effect can still be great, medical or recreational. It can still be a product people love. But for me, it's less exciting if there isn't that interaction, that social interaction to put the brand in as part of. In terms of Canada, look, we get hated on all over the place for what we could or could have not done better. This is the luxury the rest of the world has at our expense. We did it first. We got some things right. We got some things wrong. But everyone now gets the 2020 hindsight to decide what they would have done better. And it's just like, look, I am a fantastic quarterback on Monday morning. I get every play right on Monday. But on Sunday, you know, I'm hit and miss. So I think it's the same thing there. You know, I think what people forget is it was a scary time to go first, right? We didn't know was America going to shut down the border because all of a sudden we were allowing, you know, what for you guys is a class 1 narcotic, right? Was the UN going to come down on us? There's all these crazy ideas of how the sky could fall. So I think we took a relatively conservative approach. We also had to make sure that obviously cannabis people were for it, but not everyone in the country is for it. About 40% of Canadians were against it. So we also had to make sure if we were too aggressive and the government were to change, you know, that law could have gotten rolled back. So all in, I think we struck a decent balance, but now it's about evolving that and making it more consumer and business friendly over time.
Yeah. And I say that not to knock by any means. I honestly, and I'm in the US, but I honestly wanted Canada to lead it. Like you went first, you should be leading it. And so that's why it seems, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but and I know it's probably not too late. I want Canada to be leading the cannabis industry. Honestly, they were the first persons that did it. They led the freaking world, right? And that's why I say that is like, I want you to be in that position to continue to do that. And just kind of speculating on what it looks like from being so far out of it here in, you know, way far away in Texas.
But we got a lot of work to do. You know, marketing and advertising are pretty restrictive. We don't have social consumption. It'll come, but you see that, right? Whether it's Colorado, California, it's usually the first few years of legalization is just getting product out the door. And then it's about making the whole environment more sustainable, more customer friendly, and more entrepreneur friendly. So it'll come. But I think a couple of things to point out, you know, we have a multi-billion-dollar federal market. So we are one of the biggest cannabis markets in the entire world, right? You know, you guys have some states that are huge, but you know, on a whole, we're still pretty much as big as any U.S. state from a dollar spend perspective. But also, we've figured out all the kinks of having a federal program. So hopefully, we see a federal program in the U.S. It's going to make some challenges, right? It's not as easy as just a stroke of the pen. You got to think about taxes. You got to think about you know, how to allocate those taxes. You know, we have provinces, not states, but each province has slightly different rules around age and time that stores can be open and that. So you have to harmonize all that. So I do still think we really have that leadership position. And as a country for our finance industry and our cannabis industry, keep in mind, pretty much all of the biggest cannabis companies, except for a couple, you know, California privates, they're all actually Canadian public companies. So for the time being, you could argue even the you know, the GTIs and the Curas and the Crescos of the world, those are all Canadian companies too. They just do their work in the US.
Right. Heard that. What do you look for? I mean, are you, what are things that you're searching for right now within the business? Are you looking for certain type of people to join your team? Like, it's such a fascinating industry where there's people like you that are, you know, you've been in it, you know, enjoying the product. And then there's like the straight business guys who've never smoked it in their life, that are running these businesses. It's so fascinating to try to break this industry down. Like what kind of, are you trying to get around more and more people, or what are some big challenges and goals for you moving forward, other than just, you know, focusing on these business as far as looking for new business development, new opportunity, new people?
Yeah. So for us, you know, the more you think of cannabis as just any old business, the better. It's regulated, it's got some quirks, but at the end of the day, we make a thing and we sell a thing. So we need someone to buy that thing, and we hope to have some margin at the end of the day. So I think there's a perception that the cannabis smoking business person is different than the booze drinking business person, but I think we're the same, except I feel a lot better in the morning. And I'm yet to have a night where I stayed up late smoking joints, and in the morning had to think about, oh, did I say something I shouldn't have? But that aside, fundamentally, we look for good business metrics. So whether we're looking to acquire a company or take on a client, or whether we're looking to onboard somebody on the team, we want someone who is good at the business that they do, or good at the function of their business that they do. And that's why we win. Some of the people I have working for me in operations, sales, marketing, cultivation, I'd say these are the top 1% of professionals in their field in this country. Whether they consume or not, I don't care, but they all have a certain empathy for consumers and a real love for what we're doing. And again, you don't have to, for example, I used to know a lawyer in Toronto who's an avid wine collector that doesn't drink. So he's the best guy to have dinner with. He'll put the most beautiful bottles on the table. He'll have, a cent, you don't know what that is, a half inch of wine in the bottom of a glass. I was going to say a centimeter, our crazy metric system. He'll put half an inch of wine in the bottom of the glass. He'll smell it, he'll taste it and spit it out. And for him, that's good enough. For the rest of us, you can go at the bottle like crazy. But, for him, he still loves wine, even though he doesn't really consume alcohol. And again, I think you can love cannabis without being a heavy THC consumer. But that's what we look for. You got to be great at the business. You have to have a passion and a real empathy for the consumer. And then we've got to be able to add value. So when we're looking at businesses, or whether it's a client engagement or something we're taking on directly, we look at, okay, without changing the puzzle pieces, can we rearrange this to make a picture that's more attractive going forward than what the existing management team's been doing?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What about we have a real estate podcast. Like, how do you view real estate or factor real estate into anything you're doing with cannabis? Is that a big thing that comes across your mind, or more of an afterthought?
I mean, it's something to think about. It's a big balance sheet item for pretty much every company that we work with. So I think, first of all, we look at what's the level of capital investment being made. So for example, in my last company, when we were investing over $150 million in PP&E, we definitely wanted to own that piece of farmland that the property was on, right? We didn't want to have a world 5 years, 10 years, 20 years out that a lease renewal is coming up, or the landlord has a solvency problem, and next thing you know, there could be some challenges around our ability to operate the plant that we invested in. For smaller companies making a smaller investment, it may not be strategic to own the land. So I think that's just an asset utilization question. My biggest comment on real estate, and I think this is important, and this is something I worry about, especially from the lender side, when I see a lot of secured transactions or sale and leaseback transactions, for the most part, and this is not always true, but for the most part, when a cannabis company acquires a warehouse or a greenhouse and converts it to cannabis use, every dollar they spend on the asset to someone who is not in cannabis lowers the value of the asset. The reason saying is, if you take a 100,000 square foot warehouse and divide that into 20 or 30 small rooms, you may have spent a lot of money on power and water and infrastructure, but if you go tits up, unless that next tenant's also in cannabis, that landlord's gonna have to spend a bunch of money to open that warehouse back up into a box so he or she can rent it again or sell it, right? Same with the greenhouse. Once you start dividing up walls and all these other things, it's not necessarily easy for a tomato guy to go back into it. So that's one thing. I had to learn that lesson the hard way when I couldn't figure out why people wouldn't lend to me at our previous company. But it's something that we have conversations with lenders around is, if you're going to be securing something against that real estate, you need to be thinking about what's the cannabis liquidity if you're liquidating into cannabis. But if there's some sort of sectoral downturn or there's just no bids on the cannabis side, your non-cannabis value may actually be lower than before the cannabis company started spending money.
So they're evaluating, this real estate transaction based on, if you can't grow cannabis there, how's it going to produce income?
I think you have to. I mean, I think if I was lending to the cannabis space for real estate, obviously I would look at what's the valuation if this stays in the cannabis space. But, what if it's not? And using Canada as an example, so we had a lot of really cheap capital. So we arguably built a lot of facilities that at a different cost of capital never would have gotten done. But we have hundreds of thousands of square feet around this country of either half finished or abandoned projects that are vacant. And the fact that they're vacant tells me that there's nobody stepping up to buy them. So if you're a lender on that, and you would assume that, somebody's spending, let's say $20 million on a small to mid-sized grow facility, that you're at least going to get that $20 million back if you ever have to enforce a security, I think that's a dangerous risk, right? And anyone in the lending business, understanding liquidation value is a huge success factor to having a good lending portfolio. And part of that is understanding what sector or what industry are you going to liquidate into if the time comes.
That's a very good point. And so when y'all are, taking down these projects, how are you combating, that objection by these lenders?
We just do it in the value. So, part of the benefit when we're coming in, whether we're coming in as consultants or whether, like Muskoka Grown, we're coming in to take a position of ownership. These are all things we value when we look at how do we build stakeholder value over, a 3 to 5 year period, right? So we think about, if we think the assets are potentially overvalued, or maybe the balance sheet statement of assets isn't what we think it could be dealt with on a liquidation, we need to take that into account as we look at building our value for stakeholders, right? So it varies. It's pretty bespoke. We don't have a cookie cutter model because I have a lot of people that are on my team that are really, really good at what they do. They can consume information and create insights and create a thesis very quickly. So, usually we just ask for a lot of info across the business, biographies, strategies, assets, different reports. We try to consume as much primary data as we can very quickly. And then we make our own thesis as to if there's a value creation to happen. And then the next step is, based on that value creation, is there enough juice from the squeeze to make it worth our while? Because we've had clients where we said, look, we can build the business, but if we want to get paid well, then it's not worth it for you, right? So we've got to find those opportunities that have enough upside that we can do well, and our clients or our partners can do well at the same time.
Right. Absolutely.
What would you say are some of the keys that have driven you to the level of success that you've gotten to at this point? Anything that really sticks out that would be valuable for entrepreneurs or anyone that's listening?
The first one I would say is I'm fortunate to have a very supportive home life. I think I remember when I was in school hearing that more than half of entrepreneurs end up getting divorced during their startups. So I've been very fortunate. My partner Zoe, we actually got engaged this month. She stood by me for 13
Congrats.
years, and there's something to know that entrepreneurship, as you guys know, it's up and down, right? You have great days and terrible days. You seem to never have an okay day. It's one or the other. And having stability at home, I think, is important. It's actually something I look for in my partners. If we're going to jump in and do something for a few years, I want to know there's some level of stability in your personal life, because it's hard, right? You might be on the road for long periods of time. You've got calls at all hours of the day. You got to have that stability. So first and foremost, that's been big. Second of all, I've been fortunate that I got a set of genes where I only sleep 5 or 6 hours every night. So I can sit at a computer and read for 20 hours a day if I have to. And that's always been a help for me, because especially in the early days, maybe when you have a big team, there's people you can delegate work to in the short term. You got to get it done. And I can't expect anyone to care about my business more than I do. So I always want to put the most hustle in. And then the third one is I don't have a life outside of cannabis. So that's really helpful to me. So if I'm going to read, I'm probably reading something about cannabis or cannabis business. If I'm going to sit on social media, other than all the ads I get now for engagement rings and weddings, once you get engaged, pretty much all cannabis stocks, right? And cannabis companies. So a lot of people ask me, oh, how do you follow all these trends and this and that? I'm like, just don't have any hobbies. If you don't have any hobbies other than your work, you put a lot of time into it. And I think that's the final thing. I've been so fortunate that my passion for being an entrepreneur, I mean, I've been trying to make businesses since I was a kid, cutting lawns and doing stuff like that. It happened to coincide with cannabis legalization. I don't know what I would have done if that didn't happen, because I don't think I would love entrepreneurship in another field the way I love it in cannabis. And also, I don't think I would love cannabis the same way if that's what I did at night and then I did something else during the day. So, it's that family, the hustle, and just consuming a lot of primary data that I think has made me successful.
Let me ask you, does anybody ever ask you, what do you do for fun?
I smoke weed with my fiance.
Do people ask you that though?
Yeah, all the time. Like I have a saying I should say, I think there's a lot of sayings that we all use that I really don't like. So for example, everyone's heard treat other people the way you wanted to be treated, right? I think that's the worst thing. Treat other people the way they want to be treated. What if you don't want to be treated the way I like to be treated? It's kind of silly, right? That's one that drives me nuts. But the other one that I hate is the concept of work-life balance. So I started my career in law firms. They're all about work-life balance, work-life balance. It's that idea that basically you should hate your work so that you need the balance of something else to feel better. For me, I hope that people just have a life that includes work and things that aren't work, and you don't need to think about balance because you're happy to do both. So I'll give you an example. This year, I'm so proud of my fiance, Zoe. She started a food charity. So just in March with COVID, her and a couple of friends, they just started collecting food from food banks, and we make, between a few volunteers, basically a couple hundred meals every Sunday. And we take it down to some local shelters and they distribute it, to people that need food on a Sunday. And it's cool to think, we've done 10,000, almost 20,000 meals last year. And, there's people that every Sunday, they know if they go to a certain place in Toronto, they can get a nice hot meal, and we work hard to make it taste good and all that. And, in doing that, I basically took on a part-time job that's 15 or 20 hours a week. I wake up at, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning every Sunday, and we're usually not done till the evening by the time we've cleaned up and everything and shopping and all that. Well, in December, we took our first Sunday off, and I couldn't realize how much I missed it. So I get more energy, sitting and working on a Sunday for something I'm passionate about than, sitting on the couch and watching the football game. I can still have the football game on in the background, but, that's what I learned about myself this year is when you do things you love, that's recharging on its own. It's like a perpetual energy machine. When I didn't like my work as much, that's when I needed those separate times to recharge. I needed that time to watch sports. I needed that time to hang out with friends or whatever. And what I learned in 2020 is if you work hard to make sure you do things you really like to do, that whole what do you do for fun thing becomes a weird question.
I know. And
that's why he asked. It's a weird question for him.
Yeah, that's why I asked. And it made me think about it when you were talking about, every time if you're reading something about cannabis, you scroll through your phone or Facebook or whatever, you're looking at cannabis companies or stocks. And it's the same thing for us as, building businesses and real estate. And I've been asked that quite a bit. And, the answer is this is the funnest shit ever. Why would I want to do, anything else? You don't like going on hikes or doing this or doing that. It's like, no, I like doing this.
So I'm 5'8". I'm kind of fat and I'm not very coordinated. This is my sports.
Yeah.
I do a lot better building businesses and having fun in entrepreneurship than, going to play pickup hockey or something like that. So it works for me. And again, I think that's what separates people that enjoy entrepreneurship. I've been fortunate to have some wins. I've had some epic fails, and I'm going to have both, over the next 20, 30, 50 years that I'm doing this. So, I think you have to enjoy the process. If you like the process and you can be proud of the values you have and how you approach the work, whether you win or lose at the end, you still had a good time. Like, when I did play sports, I played on a ton of losing teams. I still loved it, right? Because, you worked hard and you're proud of what you tried to accomplish. And I take that same approach to business, right? I can't guarantee that financially anything I do is going to be a win, but I can guarantee that if I'm going to spend a year on a project, that I'm happy to spend that time and I'm proud of the work that we did. And that's sort of the lens that we take as we approach our businesses here in Canada.
Awesome.
That's great, man. So we appreciate your time. What are ways that we can add value for you? Maybe our listeners, anything that we can help out with?
No, I think this was super cool. When I saw you guys reaching out, haven't done much interacting with the US. So I think keep the lines of communication open. You're welcome to share my social handles if people want to give us a follow. Always happy to have conversations online if people have questions. And it's, my value is I get to learn about the US market a bit more, or how US investors are thinking about the Canadian market. And, I think that's important. So let's just keep the dialogue open. And generally, I'm John_Fowler_JD on social. You can post that out, and just love expanding my network and having great conversations about the plan.
Same here, man. Appreciate your time, and maybe we'll be passing the joint around one day. So thank you so much.
Sounds good, Austin, man. It's up there on the list of places I got to get to when I can
come on, hit us up. We love it.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Later, man.